Well, there we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to. Hello, Beth. Uh, Welcome to that album, the 59th show. Hello, everybody. This is my daughter, Maddie, who's joining me as co host today. Yeah, 59th show. So, as I said to you earlier, we should have done Paul Simon, 59th Street Bridge song and all that.
Yes, indeed.
Just to kind of tie it all together. Yeah, I mean, everybody in the audience knows this. You know, Eric and I, when we worked together, we started doing this show just like two guys chatting in the pub about music, or in this case, a guy and a girl chatting in the pub about music, and debating what we liked and what we didn't like, and kind of thinking back to what was going on at the time, and it's kind of just grown from there, and. We've covered such a huge range of stuff, but this week, The Hounds of Love by Kate Bush. And interesting, although I was quite a Kate Bush fan, this album sort of passed me by for some reason. So this came out when did this come out?
The 16th of September, 1985.
16th of September, 1985. And that was an interesting year. So Margaret Thatcher became the first post-war prime minister to be publicly refused an honorary degree from Oxford University, which is kind of ironic because she had one already from there. The Sinclair C5 launched. So for those of you of my sort of age, you will remember that, some hideous little plastic tricycle that was a death trap to anyone that happened to ride it during rush hour. It was also discontinued the same year. The first mobile phone network launched, which was Vodafone, and the first call was made by Ernie Wise. The first televised parliamentary TV debate, the miners' strike ended, the ozone hole was discovered, The Handmaid's Tale and Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit was published, Reagan was inaugurated, Gorbachev became the Russian premier, some interesting births: Lewis Hamilton, Keira Knightley, Leona Lewis, Lily Allen, Wayne Rooney, and some interesting films. View to a Kill, Jewel of the Nile, Breakfast Club, Rambo, Weird Science, St. Elmo's Fire, Out of Africa, and some great music. Born in the USA, No Jacket Required, Misplaced Childhood, Around the World in a Day, Brothers in Arms, Dream of the Blue Turtles, and of course, this, The Hounds of Love by Kate Bush, which was your choice, wasn't it, Maddie?
It was indeed, yes.
So why did you choose this?
Well, honestly, I had kind of heard some of the songs from it before, and but the reason that it really kind of stuck in my mind was after Stranger Things last year, when kind of it just flew to the charts, and it was amazing because, you know, suddenly lots of people who really hadn't heard of Kate Bush before or had heard Wuthering Heights and kind of were aware of it, became really really entrenched in her music, and they kind of discovered for the first time her catalogue.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because, as is always the case, don't worry, Graham, you've not missed anything yet. As is always the case, you know, we go online and we study what's happened in the album and learn about the artists and learn about the album, and she's an interesting character, isn't she?
Certainly.
So she trained at Goldsmiths College Karate Club, where her brother John was a karate instructor, and she became known as EE because of her squeaky ki. So when she would strike somebody, which I think is quite funny. But as a natural talent, just incredible. She taught herself to play the piano at the age of 11, and she began composing songs and writing her own lyrics. So then by the time she was 16, she made a demo tape which had all of the things she'd written on. And how many songs were there on that tape?
Oh, weren't there like hundreds?
50 songs she'd written and recorded. And then by the time her first album came out, which was The Kick Inside, wasn't it, the first album?
78 was that?
Yeah. So she was 19. She'd written almost 200 songs.
That's it, yeah.
So, I mean, that's staggering because for many songwriters, that would be their entire lifetime's output of work.
Does make one feel a little insignificant sometimes.
It certainly does. It certainly does. So, When The Kick Inside was launched, it sold more than 1 million copies in the UK alone. And she was the first woman to reach #1 with a self-written song. And she was also the first female artist in pop history to have written every track on a million-selling debut album. So what have you discovered? Oh, excuse me. Sorry about this tickle. What have you discovered about Kate Bush before we get into the album itself?
Well, I've mainly looked at the album, honestly, but you know, with Kate Bush, she, like you said, she was the youngest individual to write a song and it get to #1, and she is now also the oldest as of last year.
Yeah, and it was quite interesting that this album took 2 years, didn't it, to make?
Yeah.
So because of the amount of time, and she was such a perfectionist in the studio, after her first album, she used some of the money from that to go and build a studio in her, was it in her garden she built it?
Yeah, near her home, basically because it was it was cheaper for her to do that than it was to hire studio space for the amount of time that she wanted to spend recording each album.
Yeah. So some facts about this album. It earned her nominations in 1986 for the Best Female Solo Artist, the Best Album, the Best Single, the Best Producer at the Brit Awards. And in the same year, her and Peter Gabriel had a top 10 hit with the duet Don't Give Up. And what was your interesting fact about that?
Yeah, Peter Gabriel first asked Dolly Parton to sing that duet with him, but she turned it down, so he then turned to Kate Bush.
Yeah. And now looking back, it wouldn't be the same without her.
No.
That's really interesting point actually that Yayan makes here. Yeah, he stumbled upon her demo tape, and he was the one that actually paid for her to have the demo tape done properly, and he was a great champion of hers in the early years.
Yeah, because it had been turned down by kind of some lots of labels, hadn't it? And then he helped her professionalize it.
Yeah, well, of course, it would be turned down because it's not actually particularly good, is it?
No talent at all, this woman, you know, really.
No, although actually, as we kind of move on to talking about this album, interesting, because, well, first of all, I did really enjoy it. I did really enjoy the album, although it hasn't got any of her best songs on it. So it hasn't got Wuthering Heights, it hasn't got Babushka, it hasn't got The Man with the Child in His Eye, it hasn't got Army Dreamers, hasn't got Breathing, hasn't got Don't Give Up.
No, I suppose that's true, but obviously what's interesting about this album is it's almost 2 albums in one, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because I was talking to Jim, earlier in the week, and he said about that, you know, obviously the first side of the album is 4 individual songs, isn't it?
5, isn't it?
5 individual songs.
4 of which were released as singles.
But the second side is not that at all, is it?
No.
So, shall we kick off with do you want to give me some info that you've discovered about Running Up That Hill?
So, Running Up That Hill is, of course, the lead single from the album. She wrote it in a single evening at home, produced the track with engineer Del Palmer using a Fairlight CMI synthesizer and a Lindrum drum machine. So when it was originally released, it reached #3 on the UK singles chart. However, then in 2022, thanks to the massive amount of new attention after being prominently featured in 4th season of Stranger Things, and it was not, you know, it wasn't just playing in the background of a scene, it was kind of very integral to the story. It was used as almost the touchstone that helped a young girl stay when she was being possessed by an otherworldly creature. It helped her stay connected to, you know, Earth and her life. So it was kind of quite an emotional story connected to it as well. So it surged back into the charts. topped the UK charts for 3 weeks, Ireland for 7, Australia for 9, reached number 3 on the Billboard Top 100, and streams on Spotify increased by 9,900% in the US.
I saw that in June 22, the single had sold 771,568 copies in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, after 94, with 165,000 of those coming in 2022.
Yeah. I mean, just staggering.
So the song was nominated for British Single of the Year in 1986, and it was the theme song for the 1986 BBC One children's drama Running Scared. But it was also used in Stranger Things. So I've got a long list of things that it was used on.
Yeah.
TV shows Stranger Things, On Becoming a God in Central Florida, Big Little Lies, How to Get Away with Murder, Vanity Fair, Warehouse 13, NCIS, The Vampire Diaries, interesting, the CSI Crime Scene Investigation, Bones, and The OC, and in the movies Close, The Circle, The Human Contract, and The Chocolate War. So she's probably done all right out of this, hasn't she, all things considered?
Yeah, can't imagine those royalty checks or anything to be sniffed at.
No. So here we go, Running Up That Hill. Funny song, this, for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have that much of a melody. I
No,
don't think it has that much
funny.
of a melody.
I mean, I think it's a fantastic song because at the moment I actually live at the bottom of the hill from my university, so I can put it on loop twice and that gets me up the hill. And obviously quite an appropriate
Yeah,
song to listen
absolutely.
to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Although it was actually originally titled A Deal with God, but EMI feared that that would make it unpopular in religious countries. So it was released as a single titled Running Up That Hill. And then on the album version, A Deal with God is obviously bracketed afterwards.
Yeah. So interesting you should say that, Jim, because in the notes it says typically Bush writes on the piano, but composing on the Fairlight opened up new gates of inspiration. There was something about the character of sound, she said in a 1992 radio documentary. You hear a sound and it has a whole quality of its own that can be sad or happy and immediately conjures up images, which can, of course, help you to think of ideas that lead you into a song. I've not heard that. Have you?
Heard what? Sorry.
Andrew's comment.
Oh, no, I haven't.
So yeah, something as a Stranger Things fan, something for you to
Yes, I will.
to look out for. Yeah, that's Social Things, but you can see where he got his inspiration from, seeing as the typeface is exactly the same. Yeah, it's an odd song and one that really catches the ear. It is. It isn't. I don't think it isn't typical Kate Bush. So it's. Yeah, I mean it's a good intro to the album, I guess, but not something that I feel particularly in love with. Having said that, brings us nicely on to track number 2, The Hounds of Love. So what have you got on this one?
Well, the song begins with a vocal sample of the British 1957 horror film Night of the Demon.
Which is a good film, actually, about people that get this little note that they, black and white film, people that get this little note, and if you get the note when it gets to midnight, then the demon comes and eats you.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah, bit bad luck.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the song's about being afraid to fall in love, comparing the feeling to being chased by a pack of wolves. And in October 2004, Q magazine placed this song at number 21 in its list of the 50 greatest British songs of all time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this I much prefer to the first song.
Got a bit more to it, kind of bit more meat to it.
Yeah, that the Hounds of Love are hunting you is imagery for love itself as someone as something to be feared, to run away from lest it catch you and rip you up. Clearly, here is a woman with some issues. Kate Bush made her first foray into directing with the music video, which was inspired by Alfred Hitchcock's 1935 thriller *The 39 Steps*. The clip features a lookalike of the famous director who was known for making cameo appearances in his films. So there we go.
Yes.
So this is the Hounds of Love.
It's in the trees. It's coming.
When I was a child, running in the light, afraid of what might be, hiding in the dark, hiding in the street, and the world was following me. The hounds of love are haunting. I've always been a coward. I don't know what's good for me. Oh, here I go, calling for it through the trees. Oh, help me, someone, help me, please. Take my shoes off and throw it away. And I'll be 2 steps on the water.
So it says in my notes, the album was recorded in a windowless studio that Bush had constructed in a converted barn near her parents' house in semi-rural East Wickham, southeast of London. People commented on how the album seems very elemental, and I can't help but put quite a lot of that down to the fact that I moved out into the country. The visual stimulus of coming in was that of the fields and the trees, and seeing the elements doing their stuff. Yeah, I mean, a great song, and I love the kind of the upbeat vibe of this. You know, a nice change to the previous one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, a favourite of yours, this song? Do you think? Or
I mean, I really like, you know, the just on lots of my playlists, I have some combination of the five songs on the first side of the album. I mean, what always makes me kind of chuckle about this is, you know, Kate Bush, you know, doing all of her kind of experimenting with the synth machines and everything. She makes the wolf noises herself in a way that's quite, you know, quite distinctive. It's very obviously her, and you think surely she could have found a way to make it sound more wolf-like, but she kind of did just do it herself with her own vocals.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
I think as we've said in the past, you know, she clearly is a bit of a character.
Definitely.
So not the norm. And I guess that a lot of this kind of natural talent, because it clearly is natural talent, you know, nobody gets to write 50 songs by the time they're
No.
16 if they haven't got a natural ability for this sort of thing. And I guess that part of that is the output of not being the norm. So track 3, Big Sky. This is a song about someone sitting and watching the clouds change, like many of us have done as a child. Sometimes the clouds will change into shapes that remind you of a person or object. I think we forget these pleasures as adults, Bush explained in her 1985 fan club newsletter. That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
A newsletter to her fan club.
I do always, yeah, lovely.
Yeah, we don't get as much time to enjoy those kind of things or think about them. We feel silly about what we used to do naturally. The song is also suggesting the coming of the next flood, how perhaps the fools on hills will be the wise ones. Um, Anything interesting about this that you've got?
Well, I mean, the song peaked at number 37 on the UK singles chart, and lots of reviews of the album kind of called this song pure joy and that sort of language. But what I find interesting is they didn't use that in kind of a derogatory put down way. They meant it in, entirely genuinely, saying the song's just a kind of pure expression of childlike joy and how we should all try and reconnect with that more. So,
Cool. Here we go then. The Big Sky.
They look down and look around. They say that I love the going now. I'm looking at the big sky. I'm looking at the big sky. I'm looking at the big sky. You know the storm rain. It's changing in the big sky. It's changing in the big sky. We're looking at the big sky. You know.
So this was the fourth and final single, greatest chart success in Ireland, where it peaked at number 15, apparently. Interesting that this is another one for which she directed the music video. And I think it's interesting because she directed a number of the videos from the album for the singles, but she didn't pursue that as another string to her bow. Because often, when people start to act, if there's singers or musicians and they start to
yeah.
act, they continue to develop that. And she didn't. She just did this and then went home. So the music video, directed by Bush, finds the singer on rooftops peering at the sky through giant binoculars. She ends up in a crowd of skybound travelers, including aviators, astronauts, and even Superman, then heads to the stage for a performance. Bush put a call in to her fan club to round out the audience for the scene. And she recalls 200 beautifully behaved people arrived on the day of the shoot. It was very moving. They filled us all up with energy. It made it feel like a real concert. How lovely.
Indeed.
How lovely. So, Mother Stands for Comfort. This is a song about a mother's willingness to protect her child at all costs.
Yes.
Bush explained in a 1985 interview, it's about a mother and her strong maternal protective instincts, but is dealing with a son who's committed a bad crime. And to her, her instincts overrule what's right or wrong. I think that's what's interesting. She wrote this on a Fairlight CMI synthesizer again, as you said, Helen. Quite often I find synthetic sounds create a coldness, and if the track is lonely or sad or dark or something, you want to add that kind of coldness. That machine-like coldness is very specific, she explained in a radio documentary that she made in 1992. With acoustic instruments, you get a very warm human presence and something that's intimate and really there, something that breathes, not this kind of dead, cold machine. And I feel that both are very useful depending on what you want to say.
Yeah. The Kate Bush Encyclopedia describes this as the most skeletal song of the album, which, kind of here, it talks about the flat drum pattern providing a metronomic bass upon which the whole percussion pattern and bass melody are built. So kind of just a repetitive sort of undertone, and you can really hear the coldness that she was talking about in that interview.
Interesting that you should say that, Andrew, because I've noticed, and I made a comment on particularly on the second side of the album, made a comment about a couple of songs that were particularly Peter Gabriel-like in terms of their structure, and you can certainly see the influences there. So yeah, again, her voice is developing, and we saw that when we looked at Joni Mitchell's 2 albums, Blue, which was obviously much earlier, and Hejira, which was much later, where her voice had really deepened and strengthened. I mean, clearly in her case, because she was smoking 60 fags a day. but that said, quite interesting to see the development. So anything else on Mother Stands for Comfort?
Well, just that, this was the only song from the first side of the album not to be released as a single. And you can kind of tell why it doesn't work. You can assume that the label execs didn't think it was so radio playable, perhaps.
Yeah. So here we go.
She knows that I've been doing something wrong, but she won't say it. She thinks that I was with my friends yesterday, but she won't mind me lying. Just like a crowd rider takes make me do this, make me do this, make me do that. Am I the cat that takes the bird to hurt the hunter?
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, very of the moment, mid-80s, almost like a Jaco Pastorius-y kind of bass going on there. So just so you know, Jim, when we sell this around the world, when this is being broadcast and I'm making a fortune, I'll treat you to a Fairlight. I think it's the least I can possibly do. And as always, I try to do the least I can possibly do. Yes, and now on to the last track of side 1. Go on, you first.
So this is actually my favorite song on the album, I think.
Yeah, mine too. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So it peaked at number 20, and it took inspiration from Peter Reich's 1973 memoir, which tells the story of the close relationship between himself and his father, psychiatrist and philosopher Wilhelm Reich. And it's told from the older Peter's point of view. Kate Bush read the memoir and was really moved by it. The lyrics describe Peter's memories of life on their family farm and their cloud-busting or rain-making machine before Wilhelm was abruptly arrested and imprisoned by government officials. Kate Bush contacted Peter Reich to explain her motives in writing the song and to express the wish that he would approve of the song. And then a while later, he got back to her and said he loved what she was doing music-wise, and he loved the song.
Yeah, so like her first hit, Wuthering Heights, this is based on a book. So it's interesting. I mean, also interesting where she's a very kind of lyrical writer, very much kind of quite academic. It's like, which song is it in which she uses has the line, yeah, I think it is Running Up That Hill, where she says, tearing me asunder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and it's
really
like that's not the sort of language you expect to hear in a pop song, is it? Particularly
no.
not from a young person. Um, uh, yeah, she said about in a 1985 interview, she explained she came upon Reich's book by accident. I didn't know anything about the writer. I just pulled it off the shelf. It looked interesting, and it was an incredible story. I just love the fact that you kind of stumble upon it. And Eric and I used to talk about this on the shows where there are certain artists that something happens, and you go, a normal person would just read it and go, "Oh, that's really sad," or that's really great, or that's really
Yeah,
interesting. And these artists go, "Oh, that's really interesting. I think that'll inspire me to write a song or a piece of poetry or whatever." And then they
yeah,
go off and do that, and just absolutely, absolutely phenomenal.
indeed.
So this was the last song that Bush performed on Before the Dawn, which was a series of highly immersive concerts she staged at the Eventim Apollo in London in 2014. This was her first set of concerts since her one and only tour in 1979. So
Wow.
she's gone out on tour, and then she's ended the tour, and then 35 years later, she's gone out
Oh
on
yeah,
tour.
no, I'll do that again actually.
Yeah, just absolutely, absolutely incredible. So here we go. Our favourite, cloud busting.
I still dream.
Thing is, that's enough, isn't it? That's just like
Yeah,
that is so beautifully
it
capable.
really is.
I wake up crying. You're making rain, and you're just in reach. When you sleep, escape me. You're like my home, that glows in the dark. What made it special? Made it dangerous, so I bury it. But every time it rains, you're here in my head, like the sun coming out. Ooh, I just know that something good is gonna happen. I don't know when, but just say it could even make it happen. On top of the world, looking over the
Just absolutely outstanding the way she's written all of the different parts, and that
Yeah,
kind of counterpoint of the violins and the
yeah.
cellos with
Oh,
the kind of modern instruments as well. Absolutely, absolutely outstanding. Hi, Siobhan. Yeah, so that's the end of side one,
indeed.
and side two.
I mean, you have to listen to it, in order, one after the other, as a full block, I think. Not so shuffleable.
Yeah, so side two is the ninth wave, a 7-track concept piece about a person who is alone in the water for the night.
Indeed.
So with the first song, if they find me racing white horses, they'll not take me back for a boy, floaty type thing rather than boy.
Indeed.
Let me be weak, let me sleep, and dream of sheep. She explained in an article published in The Garden, the song is about someone going to sleep in the water where they're alone and frightened, but they want to go to sleep to get away from the situation. But at the same time, it's dangerous to go to sleep in the water. You could drown. So let's kick off the first of the songs on side two, and Dream of Sheep.
little light shining, little light guiding to so little. If they find me racing white horses, they'll not take me for a boy. Let me be weak, let me sleep, dream of sheep. Oh, I'll wake up to the sound.
So Bush Bent, she laid down the lead vocal for this whilst being filmed lying in a huge water tank at Pinewood Studios. This was to create a sense of realism to fit with the lyrics about being lost at sea. However, Bush spent so long in the water after the first day of filming that she contracted mild hypothermia and had to take a day off before carrying on. I've never worked in water before, and so we didn't know purely from a technical point of view if we could find a microphone that could cope with being submerged. Also, lying on your back is a different way to sing, and we weren't sure we were going to achieve what we wanted to, certainly from an audio point of view. I was on the having a call with Jim Spot on Medelaine, the other day, and he said about this being one of his favourite bodies of work, this side of the album, as that whole kind of entity that you have to listen to in one hit. Fascinating, and I think I probably haven't been able to give this enough time yet to really get into this. So track 2, Under Ice.
Yeah. So
Sorry. Oh. got in a panic then. Right, go for it.
I was just going to say, so Kate Bush describes this as the nightmarish dream that occurs after the inevitable sleep comes. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. This is what I love about the audience. They always seem to know far more about everything than I do. Mind you, that's not easy in most cases, let's be honest. One of the things that struck me about this was it finishes, and I don't know if you've ever seen one of these, Maddie. When I was a kid, you used to get these like corrugated bendy pipes, and you would swing them round and they would whistle, and I'm sure that it's one of those at the end of this. So here we go, Under Ice.
It's wonderful everywhere, so wide. The river has frozen over. Waterfall on the ice, only me skating fast. I'm speeding.
It's really interesting that the more I listen to this, the more other stuff that I pick up. So in the background there's a little bit of kind of a nod, the distant voice to the nod in The Wall, Pink Floyd, where someone is shouting, "Hey you, stand still, laddie." Just really interesting how she's absorbed all of this stuff from other sources. So let me wind it forward so you can hear the bendy pipe at the end.
Bendy pipe.
Past trees, leaving little lines in the ice, cutting out.
Wake up. And I did. Which brings us on to Waking the Witch.
Indeed.
What have you got here?
Well, it dramatizes medieval witch trials. And what I find really interesting about the whole second half of the album really, but especially this one, is just the texture and the way that she just weaves in all of the different kind of samplings and audios. This one has the voices of loads of different people. She says that Mother's in there, my father, my brothers Paddy and John, Brian Tench, the guy that mixed the album with us, is in there, Dell is in there, Robbie Coltrane does one of the voices. It was just trying to get lots of different characters and all the ways that people wake you up. Like, you sort of fall asleep at your desk at school and the teacher says, "Wake up, child, pay attention." That was one of the ones that I picked out actually when I first heard it. So just kind of the weaving them all.
Yeah. So I'm just reading my notes that obviously I hadn't read clearly enough. So I said it was a little bit like Pink Floyd, The Wall in the background. And then she says, in the same interview, she says, "Wake up, child, pay attention." I couldn't get a helicopter anywhere in the end, and I asked permission to use the helicopter from The Wall by Pink Floyd, as it's the best helicopter I'd heard for years.
There you go.
I thought what was really interesting about this was that the way the voices are synthesized reminded me quite a lot of Thriller, Michael Jackson.
Yeah, actually, I get what you're...
Yeah, obviously it's Vincent Price there rather than Robbie Coltrane, but it's still got very much the same kind of vibe about it. So here we go, Waking the Witch.
You must wake up.
You can hear it now, can't you?
Wake up, child. Pay attention. Come on. Wake up.
Wake up, love.
You should make the light, but see your little light's alive. Let's leave it back. Get up. Can you not see that little light up there? There.
So I'll wind it forward a little bit. Yeah, lots of kind of Peter Gabriel, bit of yellow in there in the voice as well. Really, really, really interesting and quite un-Kate Bush-like, really, compared to most of us. Not got that normal sort of, that's exactly. It's quite a dark sort of mood, isn't it?
Mm.
And
I think she talks about it kind of being someone, woken up, pulled from their bed and kind of, put on trial for being a witch. So, yeah, not exactly light stuff.
No, and interesting that she kind of lives in that world, doesn't she? That kind of spiritual, kind of old England sort of world, and obviously that's potentially why she's been chosen. One of the tracks on this album has been chosen for Stranger Things, because again, it's very much about magic and mythical creatures. Watching You Without Me.
Yeah, she says of this song that she puts in her own worst personal nightmares, kind of the idea of knowing your loved one is waiting at home, worried for you, but not being able to communicate with them and tell them that you're okay and you're still around and alive.
Yeah, so definite shades of Madonna and definitely some Peter Gabriel in here as well, particularly from his album So, I think, which happened quite a lot later than this. So here we go.
You watch the clock move the snow.
Really good point here from Sean. Yeah,
Yes.
of course. I mean, yeah, of course it sounds like Pink Floyd, but obviously he was her mentor, wasn't he? And one of the people that championed her in the early days.
I should have been home long ago. I'm not here, but I'm not
Definitely a sort of bit of Mick Karn 1980s fretless bass going on there, even though it wasn't Mick Karn playing it. Jig of Life. The notes I've got at this point in the story, it's the future self of this person coming to visit them to give them a bit of help here. I mean, it's about time they have a bit of help. So it's their future self saying, look, don't give up. You've got to stay alive, because if you don't stay alive, that means I don't. So this was written in Ireland, apparently. Yep. What else have you got about that?
Yeah, well, it's one of the tracks that the Irish musicians they worked on kind of got involved with. There was a tune, she says, there was a tune that my brother Paddy found, which he said, you've got to hear this, you'll love it. And he was right. He played it to me and I just thought, this would be fantastic somehow to incorporate here.
Fantastic. So this is Jig of Life. I put a nice burst of folky dokey here.
Your fave.
Right in my sweet spot.
Hello, lady. I know your face well. I know it well. She says, sitting in your mirror, and now is the place where the crossroads meet. When you look into the future, never say goodbye to my part of your life. Let me live. She said, come on and let me live, girl. She said, come on and let me live, girl. Spending time. She said, doesn't belong to you. She said, it belongs to me and your.
Yeah, I mean, you can hear a lot of the kind of the Irish influence.
Yeah.
Like obviously the fiddle, and then there's that funny the timbre drum where they play it like that with the funny little drumstick with a thing on each side.
I mean, you almost want to get the clog shoes out and start doing a bit of Irish dancing, don't you?
Yeah, that's not a nice thing to say, Ian. Seth Lakeman. Oh, I can imagine no one worse than listening to an evening of him.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, but an interesting song, and I find it completely unlike anything else on the album in terms of inspiration and how it's executed as well. A very different flavor, very, very different flavor.
Yeah.
Which brings us on to the penultimate track, Hello Earth.
Indeed. Yeah, so the choral in this song is from the traditional Georgian Zinskaro.
Right.
I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's performed by the Richard Hicksock Singers. Bush heard it originally performed on the soundtrack of the 1979 film Nosferatu the Vampire and decided to then incorporate it.
Fantastic. What have I got? That song is there. So when she was writing this, she Hello Earth's a very difficult track to write because in some ways it was too big for me. I ended up with this song which had two huge great holes in the choruses where the drums stopped and everything stopped. And people would say, what's going to happen in these choruses? And I hadn't got a clue. So we had the whole song, it was all there, but these huge great holes. And I knew I wanted to put something in there. And I had this idea to put a vocal piece in there. And that's where the Nosferatu piece came from. Yeah, again, an interesting song, and I think that like Jim said, what I need to do is I need to spend some more time listening to side 2 of the album. Side 1 is really accessible.
Yeah,
it's 5 individual songs, nice and easy to kind of get into. Here it's a bigger story. It's like a sort of an early rock opera kind of thing where it's telling a coherent story and it's a composed piece rather than a bunch of songs.
I mean, one reviewer. Oh, sorry. I think one reviewer said of this that it, it places huge and unreasonable demands on the listener or something. This second half of the album.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because at this time, and maybe a little bit before this as well, artists were really pushing the envelope. So I was chatting with Jim about this, and we were saying, there are songs like Tubular Bells and Autobahn by Kraftwerk where one side of the album was one track, so like 27 minutes on one track, which makes it very unfriendly to radio. And this is kind of the same thing. I think each of these songs taken in isolation actually doesn't really do very much, but when you pull them all together, it starts to have a great deal more meaning.
Indeed.
So here we go, Hello Earth. I was going to say something really stupid then. I was going to say, it's almost like you're listening to the recording of the moon landing, isn't it?
With just one hand held up hard, I can nod you out of sight. Peekaboo, peekaboo, little love. With just my heart and my mind, I can be driving home. You see, on the seat, I get out of my car, step into the night, and look up at the sky. And there's something bright traveling fast. Just look at it go. Just look at it go.
So it brings us on to the last track, The Morning Fog.
Does indeed. Yeah, the rescue of the whole situation, as she describes it, when the woman floating in the water is finally rescued, and she sees the light emerging from the darkness. So quite a nice ending to the whole thing.
Yeah, Although it doesn't say so in my mind, this was a song where they were rescued, where they get pulled out of the water, and it's very much a song of seeing perspective, of really of being grateful for everything that you have, that you're never grateful of in ordinary life because you just abuse it totally. And it was always meant to be one of those thank you and good night songs, you know, the little finale where everyone does a little dance and a bow and then they will leave the stage. I thought that the opening of this was quite, reminded me quite a bit of Ashes to Ashes by David Bowie, or David Bowie. Oh, sorry. Right, so there we are, another album put to bed.
Indeed.
And a really good experience for me. I mean, I particularly like the fact that I'm going to continue to listen to this, you know, so it's opened up the album for me, as these shows so often do. And was it everything that you hoped it would be, spending a week listening to this album? And
yeah, definitely not a hardship. Definitely not a hardship.
No, and I think that, like so many of these things, you know, when you look into it and you look into the characters involved, you start to see and be able to really appreciate the full scope of their brilliance.
Yeah,
I think that, you know, one of the challenges that we often have is that, you know, you listen to one or two songs and you kind of quite enjoy them and you think, oh, you know, it's quite a talented person, but like with Kate Bush, you know, you dig into it and you see just the sheer volume of work, you know, the way she must be just spitting these songs out one after another.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm glad that Jim and everyone else liked it as well. So did you enjoy coming on the show?
I did, very much so.
Will you come back again at some point?
Of course I'll come back at some point.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maddie. And thank you to everybody in the audience. That was show number 59. Amazing.
Wow.
59 of these things. So next week, I'm being joined by Paul Burgess, and we're going to look at Parallel Lines by Blondie. So that could have been another one for you to do, couldn't it, Maddie? But
yeah, unfortunately, I'll be on a plane at that point, though.
Oh, you will, won't you? You'll be flying to New York to meet to meet Blondie. No, not to meet Blondie. Although it's really interesting that I think you were shocked as well. I was shocked, and Joe, my wife, was shocked. Your mum, when we discovered that Blondie was American. Debbie Harry was American, even though she's got an American accent, an obvious American accent.
You just have this perception of her as a London girl. It's
absolutely
hilarious.
Absolutely.
But I mean, also, obviously, there's always the misconception that Blondie is in fact Debbie Harry rather than Blondie being the band.
Indeed.
They did at the time, actually, some of their merchandise was little pin badges that said Blondie is the band on them.
Fantastic. So thank you all very much indeed. Have a lovely weekend, everybody. And I shall look forward to seeing you all